Hey there, how is it going everyone? In this video, we're going to be talking about a very important concept in object-oriented programming, which is encapsulation. So encapsulation is a concept that simply focuses on binding data, class, and methods within a single unit, which we refer to as a class. So think of a class as a capsule that contains methods and attributes. These methods cannot be accessed from the outside. We can only access the attributes within this class using what we call getter and setter methods. In this video, we're going to walk through creating getter and setter methods as well as how to access these attributes that we hide within our encapsulated class. So let's get started with the previous employee class. So I'm going to create the employee class by saying class, which is going to be employee. And then we're going to create the initializer. So our initializer is going to be def underscore init. And for now, we are not going to use any type hinting. So I'm going to remove this. And we're just going to have ourselves. So passing the ID, name, the email, a person like a password. Let's say the employees have passwords in this case, and then I'll have to initialize these attributes like self.id is going to be equal to so. In an encapsulated class, we always make sure that when initializing these attributes, we make them private so that we cannot be able to access them from outside the class. This means that I'll have to make this ID private. Then I say it's going to be the ID that we pass in when creating the object. Then I also do the same for the name. So I'll say self.underscore name is equal to name. So this is going to be a private name. Also going to create a private email, which is going to be underscore email. This is going to be an email. And then we're also going to make the password private. So I'm going to say it's going to be underscore password is going to be equal to the password. So we can be able to create getter and setter methods that are going to be able to access these attributes. However, we can also create other custom methods that can access these attributes. These attributes are not known on the outside, but they are known only within the class. We can only use getters and setters. For example, to create a getter method, just create a method that is get. Let's say we want to get the name. So we may say get name. Then you pass in self as it's going to run on every object that we call this method on. So we may say self, and this is going to be a getter method. So the only thing it will return in this case is the name of that object on which we call this method. So then I'll say self dot underscore name. And then we can also create a setter method, and this setter method is going to help us to set the name of this particular object. We may call that setter method on. So I'm going to write a setter method. I'm going to say def, then I say set name, then I say self. Then you'll have to also specify the name we are going to set for this particular object. Then I also pass in another parameter called the name. Then what we may do in this case is to just set the value of the name to the object. Then I'll just say self dot underscore. Actually, this is going to be self dot underscore name, and this will be equal to the name of that specific object we may want to create. So we may create getters and setters for every attribute we have for this particular object. What if we wanted to create our own method? For example, if we have a login system and someone wants to log in with certain credentials, we create our own custom method that may be able to access these private attributes without having to necessarily expose them to the user. For example, we may want to validate the email and the password where they match to allow the user to log in. So we can create a simple method that does that. So I'm going to create a login method. So I'm going to say def login, and this is going to take in self, and then it will take in the email. So let's say they log in with the email, and then let's say we create up another parameter called a password. So when we have these two, we want to match them with the existing all the private email and the password. So we may say that if self, or we may say if email is equal to, if the email is the same as the private email, so we may say self dot underscore email, and then we may say, and let's say the password matches the password that we have for that particular employee object. So we may say, and the password equal to, let's say, self password. So after doing this, the next thing is going to be to just grant the user login. So we just make the user login after providing these credentials and they match. So what we're going to just do is to print access granted. So after doing this, we are going to grant the user access. So this method grants the user access. Then in case it fails, we shall just say we just print access denied. So it means print access denied. And after doing this, I'm going to save. And I'm going to try to run this on an object that we're going to create of this class. So I'm going to create an employee object. So I'm going to just come right here and say new employee. So I'm going to create a new employee object. I create this object. I'm going to pass to create an employee to instantiate a new employee. So we're going to give that employee an ID of 1. We're going to give them a name. So let's give them a name of Jonathan. And we may give them an email. So we're going to say that the email in this case is going to be jonathan@company.com. And then we can also pass in, let's say, the password. So let's say the password in this case is going to be the password. So when we save this, we're going to save this. Let's try to access these attributes. So since they are private, we expect that we're going to be getting errors every time we shall be accessing these attributes. For example, if I try to print, let's say new employee dot, let's say, underscore email, this is supposed to give us an error because this particular attribute is a private attribute. I'm going to save, and what I'm going to do is to run this file. So I'm going to run python encapsulation.py, and this is going to give us an error. Employee object has no attribute underscore email. So this means that we cannot be able to access these particular attributes outside the class. They are only kept within a class. So we can only use getter and setter methods to be able to access and make modifications to these particular attributes. So to do that, we're going to use our getters and setters. So in this case, I'm going to call our setter method. So I'm going to call our setter method of setting the name. So I'm going to say new employee set name, then I provide a name in this case. So I need to provide a name, let's say Jimmy. And now we're also going to call our getter method, which is going to print the name of the employee after modifying it. So to do that, I'm going to print new employee dot, then I'll call the get name method that we created. Then after doing this, we are going to run our code. So when I run this code, we expect that we change the name to Jimmy, and then we'll be able to get the name, which is Jimmy in that case. So to do this, I'm going to run this file again by running python encapsulation.py, and this is going to give us Jimmy as our new name for our object. So I'm going to also show you guys how we can implement this login method. So to do that, I'm going to first remove this. Now what I'm going to do is to uh, call the login method on this particular object that we've created. So to do that, I'm going to say that new employee dot login. So this method takes in an email and a password. So let's try to provide a fake email. So we may say john@company.com, and then you may also provide a password that's fake, let's say pwd. So when we call this, I'm going to save this and run. So when I run python encapsulation.py, we see that our access has been denied, which means that this method is custom, but it can be able to access those various private attributes without having to actually give us access to them, or without showing us what they are. So I'm also going to call this with the right credentials. So I'm going to provide the right email as well as the right password. So to do this, I'm going to say jonathan@company.com, and I'm also going to pass in the password as password. And when I save this, I'm going to run this file again, and this time we see that our access has been granted. In this video, we've been able to learn how to encapsulate classes, and we've learned of encapsulation as this concept where we keep methods and all where we keep attributes and all methods that work on those attributes as inside a single unit which is known as a class. Thank you for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Thank you a lot.